I wasn't sure about sharing this story. It still gives me shivers every time I remember what happened. This happened in the Amazonas, in the border between Brazil and Peru. The jungle is an amazing place to live. Everyone knew each other, and I had a big group of friends of different ages. The only horrible part of the Amazon is the existence of certain groups that try to control the region. I was 7 when this happened. Every kid in the village knew we had freedom to go anywhere, as long as it wasn't close to these certain groups, and that we could never leave the village at night. My parents taught me since I was very little how to hide in case something happens, and to run if I see things that get dangerous. I remember all adults of the village were celebrating something. I think it was the equivalent to Halloween. I remember my mother painting her face in a tribal way, and all the children went together to a house to stay safe and have fun. The eldest girl was in charge. She was 17, and as soon as our parents had left, she ignored us and she left with her friends. Our closest group consisted of 6 children. I was one of the youngest ones, and we all listened to the most adventurous one, Leon, who was 14. Whatever Leon said, we followed, because he was fun, always making challenges, and he knew how to take care of us. Yes, despite him being reckless, he was our friend. We loved him, and knew he would never abandon us if something happened. After playing soccer and eating, these 6 of us had become bored. Carla, one of the 6, had the idea to dress up like our parents did, with tribal makeup and dresses. We agreed, and soon, we were all dressed up like the kids who lived in the village of the deepest regions of the Amazon. I remember us playing around until Leon said to, and I quote, "Let's explore the Amazon and find a hidden treasure." We all cheered and agreed to leave. It was easy to escape, since the girl who was supposed to take care of us had left. Leon managed to find a lantern and a boat big enough for the 6 of us, and we decided to sail off. It was around midnight, but we didn't care. Just imagine 6 kids dressed up on a boat, splashing water everywhere and trying to find an imaginary treasure. No phones and no adults, just the jungle and us. It was life at its purest. Everything seemed to be perfect until we heard people calling. "Who's there?" And we saw a lighted boat approaching. Quickly, Leon dropped the lantern and instructed us to lay down on the boat's floor and stay very still. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I remember clearly how we were all with our bellies to the floor, grabbing our hands and not even daring to breathe. But it was too late. "Stop hiding, I see you," a voice said as the guy illuminated our boat. We stood up and I saw 4 men with guns. I'm not talking about small pistols pointing at us. They laughed and said, "They're a bunch of kids." Leon put himself in front and said that we were on a hurry because our parents were expecting us home. The biggest guy, who had a red bandana, laughed again and said, "Little kids shouldn't be out here alone at night. You could disappear in the jungle and no one would ever find you." At this point, I was super scared and Carla started crying. "You can go. You're just tribe, hua hua," which means baby in the language. And they laughed. I remember all of us hugging each other, crying and sailing as quickly as we could. Once we got home, we entered the house and closed all the doors and windows. We all slept together on the floor, but before that, we agreed not to tell this to anyone in the village, not the elders or our parents, even though no one knows what happened that night. Years later, I understood why they let us go. They thought that we were kids from the local tribe. We had no value to them. If they had known that we were dressed up and were from the village, I probably wouldn't be typing this story. First off, I am living in a very rural, small village with maybe 10 to 15 houses, but close to the highway. You can drive there within maybe 5 minutes, and also about 10 minutes away from the town. If you cross the street, it'll take you about a 10-minute walk to reach the forest. First Christmas Day in the afternoon, my partner and I decided to go for a little digestive walk, as we were really full from all the food. It was about 5 p.m. and already dark when we had left, and we had brought big and bright LED flashlights with us. I also took my camera and my flash, as I love taking pictures of nature at night. We decided to walk on a little country road towards the forest and then turn right, following a small graveled cycle track close to the forest border, which connected our village and the next, and maybe 15 to 20 minute walk between villages. In the middle part of the track, you have to walk through a small bit of forest. It's rather dark and the trees are very high and quite dense. When we entered, I saw our flashlight reflecting on something and recognized a car being parked there on the side of the road, close to the trees. This struck me as odd, as cars are not allowed to drive there, and the path is very narrow and hidden, so I was a bit cautious. My partner pointed to the light inside of the car and it seemed to be empty. I also noticed the windows were frozen, so it must have been parked there for a while. A bit in front of the car, I spotted a tree with an intriguing structure, and I asked my partner to point the flashlight towards it so I could focus better and photograph it with my flash. After I took a few images, my partner told me, there's someone standing there, behind us in the middle of the road. He's looking at us. Nobody was following us the whole way. I kept looking around and behind us occasionally, because at this time in the evening, and close to the border of the forest, there are boars sometimes. It is mating season, so they're more aggressive than usual. And indeed, there was a man standing behind us, staying out of the flashlight's reach. He wasn't saying anything, just standing there and facing us. At first, I thought he might be startled, as it may seem a bit weird if someone's just taking photos around your car. It wasn't even legal to drive on that path with a car. I decided to get up and confront him from a distance, explaining to him that I was just taking photos of that tree. He didn't react and he just stood there. I then went on to ask him if he needed some light, and he replied that it wasn't necessary. It was odd, but I was calm, sure about there being a normal explanation for his behavior. Nonetheless, my partner and I decided to GTFO and followed the path leading to the next village. It was maybe 5 to 7 minutes until we reached it. I remembered the letters on his license plate, not numbers though, unfortunately, and I googled it, and it turned out that he was from a city about 6 hours away from our village. And mind you, the country that I live in is in a very strict lockdown right now, so you are only allowed to travel even by car if you have very urgent reasons. After we had reached the first lantern in the next village, we looked back and observed the car driving a bit out of the forest, turning around and going back inside. I was able to see that he had parked there again and turned the lights off. He didn't leave the forest. We then went home on a much longer way than initially intended, as I didn't want to go back there for obvious reasons. Our flashlight battery had died on the way and my phone battery was low, so I didn't want to call the police back then. But I called them as soon as I had arrived back home and gave them all the details. A big regret that I didn't memorize the whole license plate, but it was just so surprising that I seriously didn't think about it. Also, it only occurred to me as really strange when I thought about the frozen windows and that he couldn't possibly have walked behind us, plus him having no light and not responding. He did seem to be sneaking up on us when I sat down to take the photo. I think that I was very lucky to have my partner, the camera, and the bright light with me. I don't want to imagine what could have happened if I was alone. This happened to my roommate and I 2 years ago. when we had drove into the national forest just outside of the town that we live in. We go to a small college in New England, about 3 hours from any major city. For context, this forest has quite a few urban legends surrounding it, and the local community, although they do go there often, have a lot of superstitions about how to be safe while there. I had just broken up with my partner, and my roommate could sense that I was feeling down. Finals were just around the corner, so she decided to help me get my mind off things, and suggested that we go to a nice spot that she had found last week, and just chill and de-stress. We took a couple of beers with us and drove to the secluded spot in the forest. From the moment we left the main asphalt road in the forest, I saw a couple of things that unsettled me. You could see the abandoned houses of a ghost town from the higher ground the road was on, and we saw this old rag doll hanging from a rope on a tree. It's creepy stuff, but we didn't really give it a second thought, and we kept driving. We got to a clearing and parked our car behind some trees, popped open the back of our SUV, and started just talking and playing music. About 10 minutes into this, 2 cars appeared from the road and parked in the clearing. My friend didn't pay them attention, and instead she kept talking. But as I was facing them from where I sat, I couldn't stop seeing what they did. A guy popped out of each car, talked for a few minutes, and then I saw them take out a long object covered in a dark plastic bag from the back of one of the cars. This is when I noticed these guys had guns, and not like shotguns, which I see often in this town, but handguns. And then they started lighting the bag on fire. I told my friend to get down, and she turned around and saw them for the first time. Black smoke was rising from the bag, and between trying to keep my head down and steal glances at them, I saw them take out a second object, and I heard them shoot at it, right before they had set it on fire. I don't know how long my friend and I were lying there in silence, but it was definitely enough to let the terror sink in, and whisper to each other how much we loved each other in case this was what we thought it was. At some point I looked up, and saw that they were pointing at our car and saw them walking into the woods, maybe trying to follow our tracks or trying to look for us. All they know was that right then, I told my friend to jump into the driver's seat and make a run for it. I shut the back door, and between that and the car starting up, the guys heard it and started running towards us, and then ran towards one of their cars and hopped in. We went over a hill, and driving way above what was safe for dirt roads on a hillside, we lost them. We drove to a neighboring town and roamed around for a while, just to make sure that no one was following us, before we went back to our dorm. That day, we tried to make fun of the whole situation, and got really drunk before finally breaking down and crying from knowing we had seen something we were not supposed to. We were at first terrified of telling anyone, but eventually did tell officers on campus who contacted the police, but never found anything. Hey everyone, I am French, so I apologize in advance if I make any mistakes with my English. As I said, I live in France, and this story happened to me this summer, just after the lockdown had ended. I was, and still am, 19 at the time. After the lockdown had ended, I went to my grandparents to spend a few weeks. I got tested before, and there was no problem. My grandparents live in a small city in the north of France, and they have a dog who's quite big. When I was really young, I lived at my grandparents for a year, and at the time, the dog was only a puppy. Her name is Chippy, in French, which kinda means little devil in English, but in an affectionate way. Considering when I was living there, I played with her a lot. We were both really close, and that will have its importance later. Two of my hobbies are having long walks and running. Thus, every evening, I was going out for a long walk with the dog. There's a track that follows a path through the forest, and there's a small hill, and on top of that, there's a big place with a lot of fields there. I run there a lot, so I have a pretty good idea of the place. The air is fresh and the view is quite beautiful. So, I was going there with the dog every day. It was also helping my grandparents to have her doing lots of exercise. The first time that we went there, nothing special happened. We had just enjoyed our walk. It's about 6 to 7 kilometers, so it was around an hour basically. The next day, when we had arrived on the top of the hill in the field, it was probably around 10 p.m., but there was still some light outside because it was summertime. There were 3 other people walking in the field. They were younger than me, probably about 15 or 16, and I also noticed that they were smoking. So my guess was that they had used to come here so they couldn't be seen by their parents. We went past them. I greeted them and they greeted me back. Once again, nothing special there. For a whole week, I did this walk around the same time at 10 p.m. and passed by those 3 guys with nothing special happening, and it was perfectly fine to me all the way. The second week, as usual, I went for the walk with my dog Chippy and arrived at the fields. There was only one of the 3 boys, but he wasn't smoking this time though. When he saw me, I was at the entrance of the field, just after the little hill climb, so the entrance of the forest was just behind me. He did a sign with his hand to catch my attention and asked if I had a lighter, which I actually did in my pocket. So I told him, yeah, sure. And so he walked to me, the hand in the pockets of his hoodie. When he came near, for some reason, I felt a shiver. It's crazy how sometimes your instincts know there's a problem, but you don't listen to it because nothing looks weird to you. I handed over the lighter when we had passed by, and at that moment, my dog was staring at him. And then everything happened really fast. He did a really fast movement with his hand coming from his hoodie, and I only saw something shiny. I just had a reflex of throwing myself back, so hard that I fell down, and I realized that it was a knife he was holding, and he had just tried to stab me. What saved me is my dog, God bless her. When she saw the guy trying to stab me, she jumped on him and he fell down. As I said before, it's a really big dog. I immediately got up on my feet and heard something in my back. From the entrance of the forest, I saw 2 guys wearing animal masks running to me. They were probably the 2 friends. In this moment, your brain acts for yourself. You don't think at all, and in this case, the answer he found was really simple. The other guy was still on the ground. I just watched my dog and told her, "Run." I started running and she followed me, but I heard the worst possible thing from the guy who got up as well. "Catch him. Don't let him go." At this moment, I was totally terrified. I was just running and running, and I heard them following behind me. I was thinking, how long will they follow me and who the hell are they? This was the first time I was really happy to be a runner. I was clearly better than those guys, and that totally saved me, because they chased for something that felt like an eternity to me. Fortunately, at the end of the field, there's another entrance to the forest, and this time, it descends with the road at the end. I heard the steps of the 3 guys vanishing as I arrived at the end of the forest, though I didn't stop running until I arrived at my grandparents' house and locked myself. I caught a big breath and gave a huge hug to my dog. I saw in her eyes that she totally understood what had happened, and I had never been so happy to have her in my life. After that, I told everything to my grandparents. We called the police, but they didn't find anyone. I don't know what these guys wanted, but the animal masks really make me think about some kind of satanic ritual. I really don't want to know anyway. I still do long walks with Chippy, the hero dog, but I now go earlier into places with a little more people.